We are witnessing a shift in power, in financial power from the West to the East. Because the reality is he who holds the gold or she who holds the gold retains the power. So I think we are witnessing that, but whether it's China or it's the US or it's the EU or it's anywhere, do you really think you're going to hear the truth out of these guys? Because what if the US admitted to buying stockpiles more of gold? What if? What would that tell the population? Their job is really public perception. It's really, do what I say and not what I do. And so what do? They lie and they lie. And when they're done lying, they lie some more. Because their job is to maintain their power and control, make sure that their minions, the commercial banks, maintain their power and control, and that you volunteer it so you can't point a finger and say, oh, that was the central bank. You have to get to good money because this fiat money is going away. And they can still keep dollars, and they will. They'll keep the name even when we go into the digital universe. But that's so people don't realize that the dollar is gone. And I am old enough to remember what happened in 1971 when we shifted from a quasi gold standard into a debt-based standard. Well, now the debt is so high, it is absolutely not repayable. And if this new system is going to be based on their ability, meaning government's abilities to create more debt, well, then that means that they have to get rid of this huge mountain of debt. And how do they do that? Well, the tried and true method is hyperinflation. And there is no doubt in my mind, but that we are clearly headed into a hyperinflationary depression because we're seeing signals that are occurring in the money supply and in different parts of the world that have not happened since the 1930s when they kicked off this grand experiment. That was the end of the first leg of kickoff, which actually began in 1913. Why they're referencing back to those periods of time, and that's because that's where we are. What are you going to do to protect yourself? For me, obviously, it's physical gold and silver, plus food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, which is arguably the most important part of that, and shelter. Because these are all the things that we need to sustain a reasonable standard of living as we go through this reset shift into the next iteration. In order to make this shift, when you know that you're out of tools, when you know that you're near the end of the game, if you can game the system so that you make the shift and you remain in power, isn't that then the goal? These guys, meaning central bankers, they know everything that I've told you, and they know a whole lot more. And they know a whole lot more than I do, honestly. This is where they live their lives. Well, what are global central bankers do but buying more gold than they ever have since they started recording how much central banks were buying? Even if you don't understand it, all you have to do is look at what the smartest guys in the room are doing for themselves. So you might be saying, oh, well, the U.S. hasn't added any more gold to their position, a gold market that is only physical, and so therefore a true supply and demand market, not the spot market that's based on contracts that are easily bought and sold cheaply, and it's not that big of a deal. But when you're looking at what the elites do, the one percenters that'll pay $15 million for one coin, that is at also all high records. All high records. Now, not the lower quality. This is not certainly an $8 million coin, right? And I'm certainly not saying that anybody out there needs to spend $8 million on a coin. But personally, that's the category that I want to be in, because when they change the laws and the rules, Let me be with those that either write the laws or rules or can influence those that write the rules. That's where I want to be. I would also say that we are witnessing a shift in power, in financial power from the West to the East, because the reality is he who holds the gold or she who holds the gold retains the power. So I think we are witnessing that, but whether it's China or it's the US or it's the EU or it's anywhere, do you really think you're going to hear the truth out of these guys? Because what if the US admitted to buying stockpiles more of gold? What if? What would that tell the population? Their job is really public perception. It's really, do what I say and not what I do. And so what do? They lie and they lie. And when they're done lying, they lie some more, because their job is to maintain their power and control, make sure that their minions, the commercial banks, maintain their power and control, and that you volunteer it so you can't point a finger and say, oh, that was the central bank. So if they want to stay in power, why would they give up their gold? But God, that could be leased out. It could be hypothecated. In other words, used as equity or as collateral to take on more and more and more and more debt. But the problem with debt is at some point it needs to get repaid. And it doesn't matter whether you're a government, a corporation, or an individual. Ultimately, the laws of economics work the same for everybody. It's just that, hey, they can go back in and they can, from real money that you can't counterfeit, and those have tried, but nobody's really been able to duplicate this in a lab. First of all we're seeing is the tip of the iceberg. There is so much that is breaking down beneath that system that we won't see until it's too late to do anything about it. So your nightmare of them having the ability to prolong it, I don't think you need to have that nightmare, because unfortunately or fortunately, depending upon your perspective, we have been watching that lack in liquidity, like you said earlier, right? I mean, the Federal Reserve has been buying Treasury bonds since 2000, right? If there were enough demand out in the public, out in the globe, then they would not have had to have done that. And then in 2015, we had the first liquidity shock in U.S. Treasury bonds, the 10-year bond. But since 2008, as witnessed by something that does not exist anymore, you could watch the U.S. 10-year Treasury market being handed over to traders. This is about public again, it really is all about public perception, because this is all a huge con game. So it's in relative terms when you hear the dollar getting stronger or weaker, or a country wanting to peg their currency or to the dollar, which is what you're talking about in Argentina. Well, then that means that their economy has to be managed like the U.S. economy.